District attorney's offices in several New York boroughs are saying that they refuse to prosecute protesters who were arrested during the protests. We're talking about protesters who might have been out past curfew, people who weren't looking to cause any trouble, but were engaging in civil disobedience in order to voice their free speech, their political speech. And so, in response to that, it looks as though the NYPD is pulling its cops from their offices, from district attorneys' offices, in order to make a statement. Now, the police commissioner is saying, no, it's just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence. But let me give you the details. You can judge for yourselves. Police Commissioner Dermot F. Shea said on Friday that the timing was unrelated to the prosecutor's decisions. Resources were pulled from the entire department to cover the protests, he said. But this does seem to mark a growing rift between the NYPD and the attorney's office, and it's reflecting a political reality that I think most people are also noticing, right? If the prosecutors are unsupportive of some of the police brutality that's been going on, there usually is some sort of retaliation or negative response by the NYPD. Eric Gonzalez, who's a DA in Brooklyn, says, we will review every single one of those protest arrests to see whether or not these individuals should ever have to come to court or those cases should be declined. So far, we declined prosecution when the arrest was simply for protesting and not for an act of violence. And by the way, that's the way it should be, because anytime a prosecutor prosecute someone, that's your tax dollars. Those are your resources going toward that prosecution. Why go after peaceful protesters who got caught up in this mess when you should be, I don't know, maybe prosecuting some of the violent people who show up to provoke the protesters? We've seen so many instances of that. They claim that they care so much about the looting, but in video after video, I see them allow the looting to happen while they go off and arrest protesters because it's past curfew.
Yeah, and people don't realize this issue of like arresting protesters can be very serious. Like after the Trump inauguration protests in 2016, hundreds of protesters who were arrested faced years of legal battles and were threatened with several years in prison. And it was like, it basically like ruined their lives. I mean, it's not like something to be sniffed at. It's not like you get arrested and then you get bailed out and then nothing happened. Like a lot of these people often face very long-term consequences. So it's good that the DA is doing this. And also just it goes to show that these cops think that they're above the law in a way. I remember when Bill de Blasio became mayor of New York on an explicitly anti-police platform, as soon as he came in, as soon as he was inaugurated, the cops went on like a sort of soft strike in which they were showing up to work, but they weren't doing anything. They were doing a lot of the similar things that they're doing now, and it basically freaked them out. And it's why de Blasio is so deferential to cops. I mean, they basically flexed their muscle and controlled the guy who is supposed to be their boss, right? In a way, or like the mayor of the city, like the highest elected official in the city is subject to their kind of pressure. So yeah, I mean, it's just crazy how they think they can be above all this stuff, and that they want to punish the protesters for being against them. That's like what they want to do. They want to punish the protesters for even believing that they could express an opinion that goes against everything they believe.
Yeah, the thing that always amazes me, and I mean, I feel like I'm getting it everywhere. It's the sensitivity that cops feel when you criticize police in general, when you're not even naming them specifically. Like every profession gets criticized and dragged through the mud all the time, like every day. People who work at the post office get dragged through the mud, right? And no one's like, oh, can you believe what they're saying about post office workers? No, I mean, people complain about them being too slow, for instance, right? I don't see post office workers losing it over that. Restaurants get critiqued and criticized viciously every single day. The media, I mean, in general, the media gets criticized viciously every single day. And like the idea that I would do some sort of like, imagine if I did a strike every time Cenk criticized the media. Like,
Yeah.
how ridiculous by the way, it might not be a bad idea just to get a little bit of a break, but like,
Yeah.
it's just crazy to me. It's crazy to me. And to give you an idea of like what the NYPD is so upset at, there have been various examples of prosecutors who have come out in support of the protesters, and the cops hate that. So, for instance, here's one example, one quote from Eric Gonzalez. He's, again, the district attorney from Brooklyn. And he says, the protests are important, powerful, and very positive. We need to make sure we protect that activity. And he's absolutely right. And here's a statement from district prosecutors in New York. We must take action against the use of excessive force by police. Now, look, I'm not naive. I do know that in case after case involving prosecution of police who actually do carry out excessive force, prosecutors seem to look out for them in general or refuse to prosecute them in general. But I think these statements of support are important. And I don't think these statements of support would even exist if it weren't for the protesters putting themselves out on the line every single day to voice their anger and displeasure at how they've been treated in various cities throughout the country. So I love this.
Yeah, I mean, and it just shows like grievance is just such a driving force of politics in our time, especially on the right wing. That there's just a sense of grievance for everything, that everything is against them, that everything is against you specifically, that there's these dark forces that are against you. And it's just, the reality is that these people don't see the people that they're supposed to be serving and protecting or whatever as members of their community, right? They see them as a sort of enemy force that needs to be dealt with. They see that relationship as inherently antagonistic rather than one in which it should be, which is that we're part of a something in it together. We're all in this together, and that's just not how they see it. It's been driven into them, and it's the type of people that become cops these days. Like that's like how they see things. Like, and it's not like it's not how it should be. It's not how it always has been. It's like this new thing of just like right-wing grievance, and it's just such a driving force in our politics, where they see every little thing is just this unbelievable offense that you can't give like a single inch. I mean, that press conference that Big Waz, our friend Big Waz, called a White Lives Matter press conference with the New York cops. I mean that's what that was. I mean, they see it as like they're this incredibly aggrieved party, when the reality is that being a police officer in this country, is a relatively well-paying job. It's very stable, and you have a great amount of labor union protections. I mean, all those things are very, very good if you're a cop. So it's crazy.
Yeah, and look, going back to the great point you made in an earlier story, I think that what drives police culture is the enforcement of the inequality that we experience on a regular basis, right? I mean, think about how JP Morgan Chase paid cops a significant sum of money, tens of millions, if I can remember correctly, in order to clear out Zuccotti Park. So who do they really work for? Who do they really protect? I think that we should have these conversations and have these debates and finally come to a better place.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.